Hello everyone, and welcome to the real-time functionality reporting in DELMIAWorks. I'm Corey Doden and I'll be your presenter today as we talk about the core tools for the acquisition and disbursement of critical production data in your plant. Real-time turns your system into a dynamic environment where actual production feedback is immediately made available to any person on the network with access to this module. Now, I will say that this video only assumes that the work centers are already set up and connected to real-time. We will not be covering any of the actual hardware setup or the software installation for real-time. We're just going to take a look at how users on your shop floor or other people can view and use this functionality. But with that, let's jump into our topics and agenda for today's session on real-time monitoring. First of all, we want to show how real-time interfaces with our shop floor calendar and the production reporting module. Specifically, we'll see how the real-time functionality looks at the shop calendar shifts that are set up, whether you have 1, 2, 3, or more shifts set up on your shop calendar, and then mimics those shifts as it is monitoring the machines that are using real-time. And then we'll take a look at the production reporting by shift module and how that data that is collected during the shift is interfaced and used with real-time and the production reporting module. Secondly, we'll demonstrate the custom views that real-time presents for each user. Based on the role of a particular person in the company, we can change the view that they would look at that would help them see the data that they need quickly and easily by customizing that view for a particular role in the company. Third, we'll highlight the key functions in the individual center view. This is typically the view that our operators, our machine operators, would be viewing on the tablet at their workstation as they are actually running a particular work order. Fourth, we'll understand using menu items, speed buttons, and right clicks in the real-time functionality. Again, those three main ways that we have in all modules of DELMIAWorks, we'll discuss and view those three ways of using real-time in DELMIAWorks. And then lastly, we want you to know the other modules affected by real-time, and there's actually quite a few. And we'll touch on those modules and how they are affected by real-time or how real-time is affected by other actions in those modules. Let's start our demonstration today on real-time functionality in DELMIAWorks. Now you can see on my desktop I have the real-time server running here, and once the software is installed and the hardware is connected and you kick off this real-time server, have it start running, there's really no need to ever touch it or monitor it again. Now you certainly can if there would be some network maintenance that you need to shut it down, or for some reason there's an error and it automatically shuts down itself, and then you would need to restart it. But basically, once you have started the real-time server and running this monitor, you can run it for days, weeks, months at a time without even looking at it. Now the key is here, we can see that on the top section here, there's the date that it's running and it's monitoring and the time. And now below you can see the different products that are actually being cycled through on the real-time monitor. So each machine that is connected to the real-time functionality is being cycled, and we're seeing the actual products that are cycling through. And then down below in the bottom section we have our shift details. And again, this is driven by our shop floor calendar, and you can see in my particular setup for DELMIAWorks I have 3 shifts that are running, and we can see that I'm currently running on shift 1, and then we can see that in another 5 hours shift 2 will start, and then 13 hours from now shift 3 will start, and then shift 1 for the next day will begin in 21 hours, and we can see how it's been counting down. This is critical that it's tied to your shop calendar because it's also going to create production shift reports automatically without any intervention from you and have that data available to verify and then save. Now, as you can see, I'm on the main launcher bar for DELMIAWorks, and I'm in the manufacturing module here. I'm going to go over to my shop calendar, and again, you can see the only reason we're looking at this in my plant here, the 3 shifts that we have set up. This is where RealTime is looking for those particular shifts and then monitoring the machines based on those 3 shifts, for example, in my database. Now, if you only have 2 shifts or 1 shift, then RealTime would be looking at this information for those particular time frames for each shift. Now, the other functionality or module that interfaces with RealTime is our production reporting by shift. So if I come over here and open up my production reporting by shift that was run 2 days ago, and because we were running RealTime, we can see all the data that was automatically entered by RealTime in this shift report. Again, this is another video on production reporting by shift, but I did want to make that connection that when we run RealTime, it creates these shift reports at the end of every shift that are available for review, adjustment, and then posting to the system. Now we're actually going to go in and start the RealTime monitor, and on the launcher bar I'm going to click on the RealTime machine monitoring module and go over to the far left here and open up the RealTime Production Monitoring shortcut. Now, as you'll see, it opens up this dialog box and it gives us some information about which manufacturing type or which manufacturing cell we want to monitor. And for today's demonstration, we are going to monitor my injection manufacturing type. Again, we could go down and choose different cells to monitor. And then over to the right section of this screen, we're going to decide that how we want to filter that information, in this case our manufacturing injection type, and do we want to have different filters put on for the specific information that we may be looking for. Now, this is a key point that could trip up especially new users to RealTime, that if you inadvertently choose one of these filters and then you say OK, you may not see all the information that you are looking for based on your purposely or maybe accidentally clicking on a filter that you may not have originally wanted. So we can certainly go in and click one of these filters and then look at the data, but then we may need to come back out and say include all if we want to see all the data for our manufacturing injection type in this case. And now it opens up to one of our default work centers in RealTime. Now, at the moment we are only looking at an individual work center or machine that is running RealTime, and in this case, based on our yellow color coding, we can see that this particular machine is down right now and not running. So I'm going to go over and use my navigation arrows in the upper right here and arrow over, and now we can scroll through all the different work centers that have a manufacturing type of injection. And so you can see as we scroll through, some are in the downtime mode, and others that have green or red are actually running and monitoring a specific piece of equipment. I'm going to go back in and go back to my Work Center 10 that we're going to use for our example today. And you can see here, again, we are on the individual Work Center view. And now we're going to go in, before we get into detail on this particular view, we're going to see how other views may be more appropriate based on your role in the company. Now we're going to spend a little bit of time on our speed button bar up above here. And as I said, we're going to come back to this individual center view in a little bit and spend a fair amount of time on that, explaining the features here. But if I go up to my toolbar here, there's various different speed buttons, and if I hover over them, you can see that this would be the executive view. And if I change that, what it'll do, it's a great little snapshot or quick look at various different features in our plant. This would be plant-wide, not necessarily just injection, but our executive view gives us total machine utilization, unscheduled downtime percentage, the effective cycle, and average scrap here. And then we can see some thresholds that have been set over to the right here. Now again, this is great information for our plant operations, our plant manager, maybe it's the director of operations, whatever. Whoever wants to see this, a quick snapshot of what's going on in our plant, can use this executive view. Now if I go on over, back up to my speed buttons, we can go to my cycles graph. And basically what this is, for the manufacturing type of injection that we have, we can see the work centers that are listed down the right side here, and it gives us a quick look at the cycles of the work order that's running in that particular work center. So if I go on and choose work center 11, we can see we must be in downtime there. Work center 12, nothing's running there. But in work center 1, we have some product running, a work order running. And so again, I can go back through and quickly click and see for each work center each individual cycle and how we are running. And we'll talk more about these individual cycles when we get into the individual center view. Going back up to the toolbar, if I come back over, now I can click on the plant-wide view. Again, great for our plant managers. This gives us all the work centers regardless of manufacturing type in our plant. So you can see down here, if I scroll down, these are all the work centers that I have in my database in my particular plant that I'm on. Again, here you can see that I have a lot of my work centers down in my test database. Hopefully that's not the case in your plant. But if we go back up again and I go over to the next speed button that says View All Work Centers, now that gives us just the particular manufacturing type that we chose in the beginning. And again, you can see here's all the work centers down the left here that are in my manufacturing type of injection in my plant. But again, in the beginning we chose injection, so that's all we are currently seeing in this View All Centers screen here. Now what's nice about this though, if you have this highlighted, View All Work Centers, then you can come over and change the view of this particular screen based on the role of the person that's looking at this. Now for instance, we're in the part numbers view, but if I go in and hit the little arrow, now you can see we have some different options, and if I choose work orders, it's going to go ahead and change our screen based on information and columns reorganized based on a work order view. Now if you're new to RealTime, this is where you can go in and customize your screen so you can quickly see the information that you are looking for. For instance, if I go to the quality control screen, it's going to have different color coding and different quantities brought up based on the quality control view, which we get over here. We see our standard cycle, our average cycle, and our cycle efficiency. Now if we change the view here and say we go to setup, you're going to see that those standard cycle columns are going to be replaced by other information. And here, since we are in the setup, it's giving our setup people what the next manufacturing number is going to be, what's going to run on the particular press or piece of equipment. And we can see down here, even though on work center 11 it is currently in down, but the next manufacturing number that it's going to run is RCV R48, and we're going to need the primary tool for that particular work order. So again, based on the setup control, it changes the data so those people in those roles quickly get to see the information that is most needed by them. Once again, I can go down, and if I was the material parts control person, it's going to bring up and then go ahead and tell me what raw material or what plastic happens to be running, and again the next material that may be needed for the work order, giving our material control or our forklift operators a heads up to get the right material to the right work center when it's needed, when that work order is going to run next. Again, a nice feature here that you can change the view by your particular role or specifically what you may be looking for at that particular time. Now, before we move back to our individual center view here, I do want to go over and take a quick look at our color chips. Again, our color chips are very important. It gives us a quick visual of what may be going on with an individual work center or work order at the time. Again, these color chips, you can hover over them and it will give you a quick description of that particular color chip. And as always, green is good, red is not so good, it's running slower than normal. Black is meaning it's running faster than normal. And we can see that this particular work center, if it was in that aqua green, wouldn't be monitored by real-time production. And yellow, we already know, means that work center is down. And that if it was this purple here, as in down below, we can see that the scrap rate is higher than the bomb scrap rate, which might draw some attention to it and start asking some questions about how we can adjust that to reduce that scrap rate. And if it's marked as a priority work order, it would be in this aqua green. And if our setup time warning, if we were getting close on the next work order, that work order that's running is going to be complete pretty soon, it would give us a heads up that, hey, we need to get ready to set up that next work order with the tooling that's required. And then we can also see if it's the royal blue there, that inspection threshold has been reached or exceeded and we need to do an inspection on the parts that are running on that particular work center. Again, our color chips come in very handy, quickly giving us a visual of what's going on or what action needs to be taken in a particular work center. Now, before we get into the individual work center view, I do want to cover a couple of the speed buttons. But we can see here this little gear over to the far right. If we hover over that, it's going to say, gives us the opportunity to start the next work order on the particular work center. So for instance, I'm highlighted on work center 6 here, and we could go in and we could suspend this machine and then have that work order either return to the work order scheduling pool, we could leave it on the schedule, or we could just say that was finished, and then we could go in and move this next work order down here that I've highlighted in blue up to position 1. So it gives our operators on the press that ability to go in and schedule the next work order that would be in position 2. Going on over, we have our current downtime interval. So if our machine had unplanned downtime during this shift, we could go in, the system would automatically monitor that and then could be added to a report for unplanned downtime for your maintenance or your production managers. And then going on over, we can reject or scrap parts on a particular shift. For instance, if I highlight on Work Center 1 here and click on the reject button here, we can see up above it is highlighted on Work Center 1, and then we could go down and record our rejects right from that particular function or button. And we can also go in and add labor or add an employee for labor and record their production hours from this real-time screen. And then we have our menu items up here. If we did want to check or change our cell or filter, we could go back in and then change to a different type of manufacturing type. I'll just go to extrusion. Looks like I only have 2 work centers in my database and they're both down at the time. So bad news for our extrusion work orders. I'm going to go back in and change it to our injection type again. And then if I go over to the view, again, just mimic some of the visuals that we had down in the speed button bar about changing your view based on a role or a need at that time, and then some of the other views that we've already seen on those speed buttons. If I go over to the configure, this is where we could jump to our shop floor calendar that we've already seen. we could go to plant parameters, and this is where you would set up the parameters for various different thresholds and measurements in your plant. So you can see in my database I have my machine utilization percentages and unscheduled downtime, effective cycles, and scrap percentages that would show up, number one, on our executive view as well as other areas. And we have some different warning settings here for material and setup warnings for those people that are our material handlers and our tooling or tooling setup people. And then we have our cycle thresholds here that are based on how our color codes change based on the cycle time and percentage against those. And again, we have our screen threshold or refresh time here. Basically, we're telling our system in real time that we want to refresh at least every 30 seconds when we are viewing the real-time screens. And as always, we have our standard reports for each module that you can look at and use, or have your own customized report based on one of the standard reports. Have your Crystal report writer tweak a report for you or change a report based on your process that you might need, and have that report put in this menu. But now let's go in and we're going to take a look at our individual center info. Now you can see I am highlighted on individual work center number 10. I can double click on that and now it's going to go in there. And now we are in our individual center view. Right away you can tell that this particular work center is running slower than our standard cycle time. Okay, it's red. So if we come up to our color chip, we can see this work center is running slower than our standard. And you can see various other key information that you might want to know about this particular job that's running on work center 10. Basically the work order number, the sales order that it's tied to, the manufacturing number, and the work center identifier and description as we've already seen, and even the customer information over here. Now you'll notice as we are going through the different features on this screen, you'll see the cycle time bars down below will be changing based on the last recorded cycle for this particular machine. And that gets into our production summary down here. As you can see, this is our standard cycle. In this case, it's going to be 16 seconds. That standard cycle time comes from our bill of material, directly from the bill of material. And we can see that our last cycle was indeed way slower than our standard cycle, basically over 2 seconds slower than it was planned to be. So that may cause some concern among those people that are monitoring and running this part. Again, the red should be a visual key right away that something may be wrong, and you might want to look at this particular machine and how it's running this work order. Now we can see the last cycle came down to 14 seconds, almost 2 seconds slower. So our machine is running a little bit erratically here, but notice our average cycle time, this is the average of the last 50 cycles. Color codings will key off of is not our last cycle, but on the average cycle. And then you can see other various nice information here about our shift up hours, our hours to go for this work order, if we had any downtime. And then we can see that our next manufacturing number is actually going to be some downtime. Whether it's planned or not, it doesn't look like we have another work order that's going to run. And then staying in this center section here, we have some information about our cycles to date, the daily cycles, the cycles for this shift, and then the cycles that are required and the cycles left to run on this particular work order, and our cycle efficiency based on our actual cycle times in comparison to our standard cycle times. And then over to the right here we have our overall equipment efficiency or effectiveness factors, I should say. And again, what the system is doing in real time is taking the data that it's running and giving us a quick snapshot on the availability of this machine. It looks like we haven't had any downtime. The performance based on our standard cycle versus our actual cycle times. The quality looks like we're at 100%. We haven't had any rejects. And then it calculates an overall value for our equipment effectiveness factor there. Again, a nice quick visual snapshot of how this particular machine is running with this work order. And then this last line in the production summary section gives us the detail of the actual part number and description that is actually running. We can see the total number of parts. It looks like we had to do a floor disposition or record 2,000 parts, or in this case 4 cartons of parts that had to be dispositioned and removed from the work center. Maybe there was a sales order that quickly needed them, and so our operator had to do a floor disposition. And then it gives us our shift parts and our parts to go, the hours to go in this work order, and then the day parts that are running, our standard cavitation. And then over here we have our bad parts and our scrap percentage, which looks really good at this time that we haven't had any rejects that would be recorded as bad parts, and increasing our scrap percentage. Now, as well as in any other DELMIAWorks module, we can move these columns around to our personal preference. As you can see, I just moved those scrap columns a little bit closer, and we can do that on any one of these columns in this section. Now at this time, I do want to take a look at our right-click features here. And in real time, we can see that we have a great selection of individual right-click features here. As we can see, we're on the individual view now, but we could go in and report rejects, which we'll do in a little bit. We could record downtime. We could start the next work order, and some of the same features that we saw either on the speed buttons or the menus there. We could jump to BOM, jump to inventory, or jump to the individual work order screens, giving us that additional visibility into what's running on this particular work center. And we could actually jump to the schedule, the finite schedule there, and see other work orders that might be lined up behind this particular work order that's running now. And then we have several different quality features here that we could jump to, our inspection log and the work center, inventory availability, other real-time functionality that is not covered in this particular video but would be on other videos. And then over to the right here we can see other features here. For instance, I could go in and create a priority note here, add a priority note for this work order that would then be viewed by the operator and the scheduler. So there's many different right-click features here that helps us be more efficient and gives us more information when we are running this particular work order on this work center using real time. Now, as I said before, we're going to go in and I'm going to show one of those right-click features here for a couple of different reasons. We're going to record some scrapped parts. Looks like we had some issues with about 1,000 parts that we need to scrap. Our inspection due popped up for our quality department. They came out and found some bad parts, basically 1,000, that we're going to have to record as scrap. So this is what our operator could do right at his workstation. He could right click, go to the reject screen that we saw briefly before, and again we are on the individual view of Work Center 10, so it automatically comes up to there, to the product that we're running down below. And down below is the rejects section here, and we said they found 1,000 parts, and the code for those rejects, we're going to say that there is some color variation on those particular parts. And if needed, we could even go in and then click the cavity. As we saw before up above here, this is a 36 cavity tool that's running. We could actually identify the individual cavity for certain reject codes. I'm going to go ahead and we could put a comment in here if we wanted to, like we can in many other DELMIAWorks modules. But I'm going to say, okay, we've recorded our 1,000 rejects, and now we're going to get out of the reject screen. I'm going to go in and refresh it up here, our little black refresh arrow there. And now you can see that our 1,000 bad parts showed up and rejected. Our scrap percentage went up. Before it was 0. And in our overall equipment effectiveness measurements here, we can see that our quality now has gone down because we had to reject those particular parts. Now lastly here, as we wrap up our demonstration on real-time, down on the bottom here we can see obviously our bar graph that is capturing every cycle as it runs and telling us what the cycle time for that individual cycle was. And we can see the various different threshold lines there. If it's running too slow, too fast, we can see those three colored lines here, red, green, or yellow, and gives us a quick indication of overall how are we running on the last 50 cycles here for our, in this case, our black button work order. And if we click on the summary tab here, it'll show us for each shift the day of the shift and which shift it was. Again, some cavitation, good parts, bad parts, production hours, the average cycle, and some performance features here. And what we would see now when we would go into our production reporting, for instance, when this particular shift is done and then shows up on our production reporting by shift module that we saw earlier in our demonstration, that shift would show up and then show that data down here for the shift. Now, as you can see, today's date is December 22nd, and when that first shift would be completed and we transition to the second shift, we would get the data for today's date, December 22nd, the first shift, and the various different information down here that would automatically be recorded in the system. That completes our demonstration today of real-time functionality. So let's take a look at our top 5 takeaways today for our video on real-time monitoring. First of all, shifts are tracked in real time according to our shop calendar setup. It looks at how many shifts we have set up in our shop calendar and then will automatically record data for each work center that is running in those shifts. And we saw those different shift reports based on real-time running certain work orders on a certain work center. Secondly, real-time automatically creates those production reports by shift, as we saw. Nobody has to go in there and manually add a shift. When the shift is completed, real-time signals to our production reporting module and creates that shift report automatically, so then we can go in, make adjustments, and then post it to the system, making the changes for inventory, labor reporting, and machine reporting. Third, users can select and use a view based on their role in the company. And I think you saw the various different views and ways we can look at the data, whether you're the CEO of the company and want to look at the executive view, or whether you're the material coordinator and want to see a material view of where you have to supply raw material to the next work center or to the next work order on a work center. Fourth, real-time captures overall equipment effectiveness factors so you can evaluate how a machine is performing. Right up to literally the second, you can see changes in how your machine is performing and maybe make adjustments if required, if it's not running per the standards that you have set. Lastly, machine operators can create floor dispositions for a product that is completed. They can log rejects, as you saw, and they can set up the next job right from their machine on a laptop or a tablet that's connected to real-time on their particular piece of equipment. I hope you've received great value by viewing this video. If you would like individual targeted training on this topic, you can contact our training coordinator at the email listed here. We can then provide a special session for your team using your data. This is a great way to address your specific concerns using this module. As well, you can always go to our website and see a calendar of our standard scheduled training sessions in DELMIAWorks. Thanks again for being an awesome DELMIAWorks customer. Please look for other related recordings in our video library. Here's wishing you a great day and a great business.